Okay, we're doing this. I've been putting it off. It's really late. I just don't know that I have anything to say about anything right now. But you've decided to listen. And that means something to me. So here we are. This is Jay Brown Yoga Talks podcast. My name is Jay Brown. I hope you're doing okay. If you're new, welcome. Everyone else, what's going on? Are you all right? Are we all right? It feels like we've reached a new level of surreal. The president tested positive for COVID? What? The election is a month away. What does that mean? What does that mean? And today's conversation with Seane was recorded 2 weeks ago. I had been thinking about reaching out to Seane because I wanted to talk to her about the election. When she was on the show last, she talked about off the mat and going to the Republican National Convention. Maybe some of you remember I was talking a few weeks back about the lawn signs in my neighborhood, and I was thinking, Seane would be a perfect person to talk to. And before I got a chance to write her the email, someone else reached out to me and pointed my attention to an Instagram post that she had made about QAnon and the coming election. And so I was like, oh my God, she's talking about the election already, and she's talking about QAnon and the overlap into the wellness industry, which has been mentioned a couple times on the show, but I reached out to her and we recorded this before all of this recent crazy news. And believe me, I understand that there's a lot of people who are fed up. I'm fed up with both political parties. But it does seem like we're like a DEVCON 4 moment here. Like there's a existential fork in this road. And it's just so hard to know what to believe and what's true and what's not true and how to think about any of it. I've been feeling very overwhelmed by the whole situation. But I do think it is helpful to try to talk some shit out. And so I was very grateful to have an opportunity to talk some shit out with Seane. I found the conversation to be useful and affirming and, dare I say, hopeful. I'm glad that you're going to get to hear it today. Real quick before we do, I want to say something to any of you who are managing or owning yoga studios, or maybe you're just a teacher who's got your own online stuff going on now, and you need a way to register people for classes, have an easy, convenient way to get out those links and keep records for all the stuff that you're doing. Maybe you're using a software already that you're not so happy with. I want to recommend that you check out today's sponsor, KarmaSoft. Longtime listeners, you know, KarmaSoft is the software that I used when I had my yoga center back in Brooklyn. Rudy Senegal, go back and listen to the episode I recorded with him. He's the owner, and I just think right now, in this moment, if you're working on getting something together or you're trying to reorganize, having somebody you can really work with who's got some solutions that make sense for individuals. You don't have to be dealing with the huge, massive, inhumane corporation, but like actual people who can help. I think you should check out KarmaSoft. Go to karmasoftonline.com. Also, this episode is brought to you in support by Podcast Premium subscribers. People like Elisa Malinverni and Coy Thompson. We're so grateful to all the people who choose to be Podcast Premium subscribers. By doing that, Not only do you get full access to our archive, but you help to support and sustain the show. It is a choose your rate, and if you're in a bad situation right now and there were some episodes you were hoping to listen to, just shoot us an email and we will hook you up with a free account. But it really does make a difference, those of you who choose to become Podcast Premium subscribers, and we are grateful. You can find out about that along with all of my other stuff, all of my live stream classes and my teacher's class, and the new A Yoga of Business course that we announced last week. All of my stuff can be found at jbrownyoga.com. All right. I think I'm just going to leave it there, y'all. Like I said, it's really late. Frankly, I just had a hard time motivating. And I just don't got anything else to say. So let's just let it be, all right? Let's let it be what it is. I will touch base with you on the other side, do a little debrief on the conversation. But let's just get to it. Let's go ahead and listen to this conversation that I had with Seane Corn. Hello?
Hi, it's Seane. Oh, am I not seeing you?
Oh, I don't have the videos on. Do you prefer to have the video on?
No, this is perfect. I am so sorry. I got my schedule kind of confused this morning. So I apologize that I'm late.
No. Are you okay? Do you have time now? If you need to reschedule, it's okay.
No. It's totally fine. I just got distracted. I made the worst. I was making scones this morning, and instead of using vanilla extract, I used fire cider tonic.
Whoa! So not what you were planning, eh?
No. So they taste like garlic and jalapeno and apple cider vinegar. So I was just distracted, and then Jessica wrote me and reminded me. So I'm glad she did. My mind was on my scones. So, but all good. I'm here and everything's full.
The scones have gone wrong. Well, Seane, it has been almost now 3 years since I last spoke to you on the show.
Is that true? Really?
Yes. A lot of time has gone by. I'm really appreciative of you giving me some of your time today to talk about that post, because I've seen it got to the New York Times and you've been making the rounds. So thanks for making some time for me as well. I really appreciate it.
Of course. I'm happy to talk to you always.
Well, Seane, before we get into all that, I am sort of just curious to know, how it's been going for you. How did the pandemic play out for you? Did you have to cancel everything and jump online like everybody else? What did the last 6 months look for you?
Thank you for asking. No, I did not jump online right away for a lot of reasons. It's complicated because on one hand, the pandemic was a real blessing for me and for my family for a few reasons. One, my stepdaughter had a baby, and had I been on the road the way I normally am, there would have been 1,000 moments that I would have missed that I didn't miss as a result of being here, that I got to really take this time to bond with my grandchild and to be really present to this change in our lives. I've been talking for years about getting off the road, but my work ethic is it's very ingrained in my body. It's New Jersey working class, it's like, if it ain't broke, how it goes. And everything was working really well in my favor, but my schedule was not sustainable. And I just didn't know how to stop. And the pandemic forced me to have to break that rhythm. And it was only until it was broken that I realized how unsustainable my schedule was, how tired I had been for a really long time. And I don't think I could ever go back to doing what I was doing. And it allowed me time to deepen my yoga practice, to get into studies that I've been wanting to, but been putting off just because I didn't have the time, the energy, or the bandwidth. And so the pandemic gave me a lot of space for that. And confronted a lot of just like everybody else, like really, I'm in a blessed position in that, thankfully, I financially, taking this time off wasn't life or death for me the way that it is for a lot of other people. I didn't have to worry about that because I've worked so hard and long and was able to save money. So I didn't feel that panic that perhaps a lot of my other yoga teachers and colleagues felt. That's why I didn't rush to get online. I didn't want to get online from a place of panic or lack or fear. I wanted to serve my community, so I did once a week, just prayer-based classes for free, just to keep in touch with the community and to be supportive. But I didn't really do anything in terms of my own, my own career. That's changing. I will be going online fairly soon, maybe in October. But this was really a time of deep reflection, deep inner work, family, and also being present to what was happening to our society, national unrest, financial instability, all the uncertainty. I had to really get present to it in a very different way. So I think for most, there was some positive feelings for me, the pandemic, and a lot of fear and instability and loss, a lot of grief. Haven't seen my mom in 9 months. That's never happened in my entire life. But if that's the worst that's going to come out of this pandemic, then I feel like then I've really lucked out compared to most people. So that's kind of that's where I've been at. Yeah. And you, everybody healthy in your world?
Yeah, everybody's healthy in my world. I talked to you 3 years ago. It was not too long ago after I had moved from Brooklyn to Pennsylvania. And at that time, I had shifted a lot of stuff I was doing online, almost like 50% of my teaching in a way. And so when the pandemic hit, I kind of already had stuff in place. I didn't have to scramble like a lot of folks I know did.
That's great.
But I did take a pretty, massive hit not being able to travel, because I definitely had like an in-person teaching schedule like you.
Yeah.
And I know what you mean in terms of its sustainability. Like I had made some changes, and for 2020 in specific, I had come up with a new plan so that I wasn't doing it like I was doing it before, because it totally wasn't sustainable, as you said. To try to find ways to do it that felt more of like doable and not gonna be so all encompassing like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I got 2 small kids too, and I don't want to miss their whole childhood either.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's easy just to kind of get into that rhythm, It's just my nervous system is very set up for packing my suitcase, getting on a plane, doing my thing, coming home. I didn't really give a lot of thought until it was taken away. And I realized this is not, there's another way to do this that's more balanced. So I intend to, and I hope people hold me to it.
You need people to help hold you to it. Me too, totally. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because we do it because there is like a very fulfilling thing that's happening. It's like worthwhile work. We're passionate about it, and that's why we're doing it. So that could be the confusing thing, because like time I spend when I'm out teaching is really rewarding on a lot of levels. So. Yeah. But at the same time, like you said, it's got to get balanced out with everything else. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, yes, it's very fulfilling. But like I had mentioned, for me personally, because coming from the background I come from, so much of my sense of self is dependent upon my work ethic. It's a through line in my family. It's very historical in my family. And so whenever anything happens like this, I really have to sit with some of that old ancestral trauma around. I think it's a deep Jewish Polish thing that it can all get taken away. That it's a survivor's mentality, because anytime there's that disruption, there is in my body this sense of like I could feel a subtle panic. Even though, like I said, I have savings, I have support, like I'm fine. Yet my body tells me differently. that it can all get taken away. And I know that that's old historical trauma. So the pandemic forced me into that experience again of like, oh, a lot of my relationship with work has to do with survival. Like it runs on a deep unconscious, this feeling that, I got to keep going because if you stop, it can get taken away or people will suffer or I won't be able to be there for my family. So, which again, on a literal level, that is not true. None of that is true. But my body has a different reality.
Yes, it's an impulse. And some of that might be a bit ingrained into us from one way or another. Like you said, a family or even just societal mores that make us feel like we need to be forever striving or working hard like that. And like we don't have days off like in Italy or whatever, like American culture is go, 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 go.
Yep.
Well, the other thing is that I had really thought to reach out to you before I did, because I wanted to maybe have some conversation around the election. And I thought of you because last time you came on, we talked about, I think it was it 2008 or 2012 when you went to the Republican National Convention? You brought yoga to the Republican National Convention.
Yeah.
And I just thought, it'd be fun to talk to Seane again because we're in this election year and it's sort of like, it's hard to talk about politics with people. And I thought, I could probably have a conversation with Seane about politics that might be useful,
Right.
But then before I got to it, I was about to email you that I happened to see that post that you put out about QAnon. And I was like, wow, because I've been following the Conspirituality podcast and what's been going on with them. And I mean, I have to say, I was, I've noticed that there was something going on, but I'm not on social media that much these days.
Mm-hmm.
And, after I saw the post from you and you scheduled to talk with me today, I have this weekly teachers call that I do every week. And it has, a good group of teachers from all over the world. And I asked them about it. I said, did you guys see the post that Seane Corn shared? And do you guys know about this QAnon thing? And pretty much none of them even knew anything about it.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I think it was because most of them are maybe, honestly, like a little bit older and they're really not on social media.
Right.
And then a couple people did, and I've had some other conversations about it. And what I would say to kind of get us started is I first discovered QAnon back in 2016. Like it was the Pizzagate thing, and it was all about like trying to like discredit Hillary Clinton so Trump could get elected. And there was a lot of people theorizing that it was like Russian bots. It was the Russian influence on the election or whatever. Like that's what I remember about QAnon from back then.
Yep.
And then I know that when the pandemic hit, like you were describing even for yourself, I mean, for everybody, but there was, even in the yoga world too, there was like so much like shell shock happening, and really hard to distinguish even till this day, because there is conflicting information and everything's become so polarized and so much politics involved. It's actually hard to really know what to believe and what not to believe.
Yeah.
And I think that I watched, that Plandemic movie came out, and I'll admit I'm prone to conspiracy theories in general.
Mm-hmm.
Myself, like as a person, and I'll just say it, and people don't like when I say it. It's like I've never had anybody explain to me why World Trade Center 7 fell down, and I don't believe that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. Like those are things that, you know what I mean? I'm admitting that right up at the front here.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like this QAnon thing and Trump being the savior, that's something else, And so I guess I'm wondering, like for you, when did you start to first hear about this QAnon, and like how did it sort of start to come about for you that you felt like you even needed to talk about it?
Well, I had heard about Pizzagate and all that stuff, and I never really paid that much attention to QAnon. I knew it was alt-right folks just stirring the pot, and I also knew its roots in 4chan and 8chan, and these are platforms that are rife with conspiracy theories and a lot of other things too. It's a place where you can post where they find sites on pedophilia. It's kind of the dark web. And I didn't really give it much attention. It wasn't until after the pandemic hit and the movie Plandemic came out, and a lot of folks were reaching out to me, colleagues actually, and saying things that were at first just a little confusing, passing information to me related to anti-vaccination, related to COVID being a hoax, things about George Soros, Bill Gates, 5G, and wanting me to watch this video, wanting me to listen to this lecture. And so, I'm alt left enough where I'm curious about all of it. So, I'm open to checking stuff out. But it was just so clear to me when I was reading this stuff. I felt like I was being taken down these rabbit holes. And the more I went down these rabbit holes, the more absurd some of the conspiracies became. And the more they led to Trump. It seemed like every road led to Trump. And I started to investigate it more and realized that I felt like the alt-right and the alt-left were somehow meeting around health and wellness. And a lot of people who would define themselves as alt-left progressive, they have a natural distrust in the government and a lot of concern about healthcare. And these were the places that kept getting ignited. But like I said, I kept seeing this aggregation towards Trump that made me uncomfortable. So I would talk to some of my colleagues, and there was a rigidity in the communication that I had never experienced before. And it seemed like a lot of hostility towards me, using language like they were concerned because there was this paradigm shift that was happening, and there was a great awakening, and that there were people on the inside that were fighting the forces of evil. And I was like, wait a second, this sounds very evangelical to me. So I started doing more research and saw that that is part of the rhetoric of QAnon also, this great awakening. You take the red pill, the blue pill, there's this matrix. And I just was having a hard time with it personally. And I just asked my colleagues to say, like, look, I'm not down. I know that with every conspiracy theory, it starts with there are seeds of truth in it, but there's something fanatical about this. And to suggest that Donald Trump was a light worker, because that was what the dialogue was becoming about, that Donald Trump was actually doing good, but he needed to outwardly look like he was a disruptor, look like he was an asshole, look like he was, kind of like fighting the powers that be in a really aggressive way, so that behind the scenes, he could do all the things that we actually want him to do that are good things, and that he's a force for positivity. And that's where I drew the line, not when, his policies, his rhetoric, his actions, everything about this man is, in my experience, not steeped in compassion or empathy, or you can't even suggest that this person is a light worker in the world, not when he has deliberately tried to divide in the way that he has. And also knowing that QAnon has its roots in white supremacy culture. I just couldn't be a part of this. So I made it very clear to some of my colleagues. But then there was this movement that was happening among some of them called #WalkAway, which was a real aggressive kind of a social media campaign to get people who were voting blue to walk away from the Democratic Party. And with everything that's on the line, I just felt like I needed to say something to the community and let people know where I stood, and to invite them into a space of discernment, to be conscious about what it is that they're posting personally, like to really look back at where it comes from. And that was it. I really didn't have a big agenda. I had been in conversation with many teachers who felt like I did, who had also been recruited, if you will. Like there was the attempt to be recruited by friends, family, colleagues. And we were in agreement that we needed to make a joint statement just to let people know where we stood in case anyone cared or needed affirmation or even shared language. I didn't expect it to go viral. That I hadn't anticipated. Had I would have made some changes perhaps in my statement. It was a little bit more benign in my thought process was more benign when I went into it. But it struck a nerve, and I have no regrets about it at all. But that was really where this was all born from. It was just me being in a process around this, and it felt uncomfortable and dangerous. And with an election coming up that's as important as this one, I wanted to I don't think that I'm going to turn anyone away from QAnon, but perhaps those that didn't know or who were vulnerable or questioning, maybe they would think twice. That was really kind of the impetus about it. And people who are listening, what they need to understand is that if you can imagine QAnon, the idea that you throw a rock into a pond, and in that center point, it is at its most resonant, and then everything kind of expands from there, the ripples. There are some people who have bought into certain ideologies related to QAnon that might have to do with like sex trafficking, for example, or anti-vaccination, though, that kind of lives within the periphery. But what I'm talking about is QAnon at its core, which is QAnon is suggesting that there is a cabal of left-winged politicians and celebrities who are working together to traffic children and are literally drinking the blood of said children to gain their own power. So it's a satanic cult. And what QAnon has done is co-opted hashtag Save Our Children and Save the Children to appeal to the sensitivities of people in the wellness world who they're going to think, of course we want to save the children. Like, oh my God, 800,000 children are being trafficked. Like, oh my God, why are we not doing something about this? But QAnon they're not concerned about the children necessarily, but they are using that as a way to pull people into that rabbit hole that gets you ultimately to vote for Trump. And so my thing was about the core of QAnon, to not listen to this nonsense. It's not to suggest that people shouldn't be free thinkers, that they shouldn't think about alternative ways of getting your news. None of that is true. It's more about QAnon at its core.
I mean, the word that stands out to me from what you just said was this word you said, recruitment. Like you felt like there was recruitment happening. And I think that it's what you described is, if you like read the reports on how governments used social media to affect elections, you just described it exactly, where there's all these different things out there. Like I had Annika Lucas on the show, and she herself was sold into a pedophilia ring. So these things exist. It's not like they're not out there. And then, like I said, there's reasonable questions to be asked about vaccine without being anti-vax. So there's all these like gray areas, and I'm always trying to like have the nuance of that on the show. I have this long form show, so I bring people on and I say, let's have a nuanced conversation about these things, so everything's not so binary like on social media. But the reality is, on social media, that's how they use it, because you're scrolling through your feed and you find something that really does resonate with you. Yes, I have that same question. But that does end up becoming a rabbit hole, as you described, to a point where like someone thinks that they need to vote for Donald Trump. Like there's a point where it becomes a mind worm or a meme, an infect, like a virus thing,
Very much so. Yeah, it's and that was really what my concern is. Just the level of disinformation, manipulation, real recruitment tactics. This is strategy. it also bothered me. I started working around sex trafficking back in 1999. I worked at Children of the Night, which at the time was the only shelter in Northern America that housed and educated children who had been victimized by sex trafficking and also went through the system. And then from there, I worked with Youth AIDS, which provides life-saving medicines to children worldwide with AIDS. And I went to India with them and worked in brothels. And in the brothels in the slums of India was where I was introduced to the international sex trade industry, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And I saw children who had been trafficked and really started to learn firsthand about not just the seriousness of this issue, but also the incredible organizations that are out there that are doing remarkable work to combat it. And then with Off the Mat in, 2010, we raised $1 million to for India to be distributed amongst different organizations that focused on the sex trade industry, including working with Apnea App that works from a policy level to building transitional homes that help young girls who age out of the shelters between the ages of 18 and 24, which they're incredibly vulnerable to being basically trafficked again. So sex trafficking, human trafficking has been an interest of mine and something that I have rallied around and tried to bring awareness to since the 90s. So when suddenly there's all this save our children, save the children, and people are just freaking out as if this is a new phenomenon, as if this is something that out of nowhere, it's just that they haven't been paying attention. But what it's also doing is by flooding the social media with these hashtags, it's sending these organizations on wild goose chases. It's taking resources from these organizations in a way that they're distracted from doing the incredible work that they have been doing. So I found it personally really offensive. It's if people want to help, stop hashtagging, get together, raise some money, and give it to the organizations who are actually doing effective and incredible work. Ask them questions, bring them into the forefront of this. What's happening is these organizations are coming forward and basically saying, stop it. This is not helping us at all. This is misinformed. And so that was another reason I was personally, I really felt the affront of this was because pedophilia, it does exist and it is huge. Sex trafficking does exist and it is huge. And this is not the way that we're going to end it. Not through these.
Yeah, voting for Trump isn't going to end the pedophilia and sex trafficking.
No.
Wow. Well, I guess I'm wondering, I feel like some of it has so much to do with the pandemic did put everybody into kind of a state of, collective trauma.
Yes.
And this kind of state of hypervigilance and not really sure what to do. And I guess I'm wondering, at some point I heard you talking just recently, I was listening to some of the other interviews that you've done. And I want to have it said here too, about this kind of profile you saw on Instagram.
Yeah.
Where you really thought, oh, something's not right here.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things that I want to say. One is that I think people are vulnerable to this right now. Because you mentioned the word trauma. I mean, we are in trauma right now. There is a sense of hypervigilance and confusion and fear. And with that, people often need a quick fix. We see it in the spirituality community, crystals and essential oils. Not to suggest that those things don't work. There's principles to them. But there are a lot of people who think that that's the end all, if I just have that crystal, it'll take away my pain, my fear. So there can be a lot of magical thinking that happens within the wellness world. And, believe me, you should see my altar. It's just recently
I've been saying it, but I've been saying it I I believe in unicorns and rainbows, but I don't want it to seem cheesy, and I want to not hurt anybody. We can maybe talk about that a little bit more, but you were saying there's magical thinking, and I think you're right. There's certainly those threads in the yoga world and the wellness community.
And I think what QAnon has done in their brilliant strategy in using feeling words to speak to the fears and concerns and the instincts that people are having. People know something's wrong, but they don't know what it is. People know that they can't trust the government, that there's a lack of safety in an environment that we've been sold a bill of goods, that our world is a safe and secure place. The pandemic has proven that that is not necessarily true. 9/11 showed that that's not true. This administration has shown that that's not true. We are way more vulnerable to both seen and unseen forces than I think that some people had imagined. And people are looking for a fix. And QAnon, in the way in which they're delivering information, is doing just that, including using the music that they're using in some of their little videos. It's the same kind of music you'd use for meditation. It has an impact on the brain waves. It puts you in a state of calm and awareness. It regulates the nervous system. And in a yoga class, you might use that music to plant words like forgiveness and peace and love. Whereas in QAnon, you open up those channels, and then you're planting fear, division, separation. And so I think there's a lot of really conscious tools that are being used as a way to impact the way in which we're thinking. And so that's the thing I wanted people to be alerted to, that these are not just like memes. They know the words to use. They know the music to play. They know the feel and the taste.
They're using like the template of the yoga influencer.
Yes. And so then, for example, I started to explore social media a little bit more and found some sites that immediately I would look at these influencers. The colors, the fonts, the arrangements of the way in which when you know about social media, I don't follow this myself, but as an influencer, like the top 10 things to do when you're curating your page, I was seeing examples of that. And so there was this one page where brilliantly curated, beautiful. There was definitely like money behind this. The photographs were gorgeous, and there'd be one picture of her doing yoga, and the next day it was like her food. The next day after that, it was a lifestyle shot of her in a cute outfit on the beach. And then boom, there was a pretty slide in pastel pink with beautiful font that says COVID is a hoax. And then as you go through those slides, it's giving you all this misinformation that if you follow QAnon's threads, you're going to see similar talk, similar sound bites. And then it would go back to a picture of yoga, a picture of food, a picture of lifestyle, and then pro-gun. And then it just was so consistent. And I thought, this is genius. I would think.
Well, it's like Black Mirror shit. It's like,
yeah.
I mean, I guess that's that when you describe that, do you think that that's a real person? Do you think that's a fake account?
I don't know. It could be. It could be a fake person. It could be computer generated. And it could be a real person that is working in conjunction with other people to build this out. That wouldn't surprise me at all. It could just be a single person who just has incredible resources and, just lives within those worlds. But it's enough to make me curious.
Well, I guess also the important point of that is it's enough to...
If you are hearing this message, then you're listening to the free version of J. Brown Yoga Talks. To hear the rest of our conversation, please subscribe to Podcast Premium at jbrownyoga.com/premium.